Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
From my home in Grand Forks, North Dakota, just a few feet from the Christmas tree in my family. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show, guys. It's a special edition of the Ask Noah Show because even on Christmas, we're still the show that puts you, the listener, in the driver's seat. You guys are still the content. Merry Christmas to all of you guys. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm really thankful to all of you guys who have made the Ask Noah Show and the Ask Noah Show community a priority all year long. And this Christmas is a holiday that's celebrated across the entire world, which is kind of nice. Sometimes I get, on 4th of July, I kind of feel like I leave our friends across the pond. Leave the music playing. I feel like I leave those guys in the dust. So Christmas is the day that everyone gets to participate in. So thank you very much for joining. Again, the phone lines are open, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. The email live at asknoahshow.com. That said, I would not be surprised if we don't take a single call this hour. We've got one guest that's going to join us, Mr. Simon Quigley, but chat room's giving me a hard time. So we're going to have one guest, but I would not be surprised at all if we don't get any guest calls, and that's perfectly okay. I hope you guys are at home celebrating with your family. I just happen to know after years and years of doing Christmas, I love Christmas. Christmas is my favorite holiday. I wait for it all year round. And even as much as I love Christmas and as much as I love being around family, in fact, we host Christmas at our house. So all of our family comes from all of our different walks of life and different sides of the family. They all come to our house on Christmas Eve, and we all get together, and I love it. I love the cooking. I love hanging out with people. I love giving gifts. I love everything there is to know about Christmas. And yet all of that, there gets a point where all the businesses are closed and everyone's locked at home, where at some point during the Christmas holiday, I start to get cabin fever. I'm like, I need to get out just for a minute. So this is kind of my break, is to come hang out with you guys here on the air. If there's somebody else that has cabin fever, so to speak, then you're welcome to join us, because the phone lines are open. Okay, so let's dive into this. So obviously the biggest news of the week is Ubuntu 17.10 pulled their ISO. I'm pulling this article from theregister.co.uk. Headline: Incompatibility with BIOS on certain Lenovo Acer systems. A bug in the Intel SPI driver, coupled with Linux kernel 4.13 shipped in Ubuntu 17.10, can leave users unable to update any of their BIOS settings, including their system's boot order after this version of Ubuntu. A kernel with a fix for this issue will be available in Zesty updates shortly, but for the time being, the 17.10 installer images do not contain the kernel with this bug. Users with affected systems should not upgrade to 17.10 or boot 17.10 installer image until this issue is resolved. Doing so may result in your computer requiring professional servicing in order to restore BIOS function. A full list of affected models can be found and then they link an article. If you have installed Ubuntu 17.10 on an affected system, you may not immediately notice this problem because Ubuntu will continue to boot from the disk. To verify whether the system has been affected, create a USB stick with the Ubuntu 16.04 desktop and attempt to boot it. If you are able to boot it, then your system most likely has not been impacted by this bug. If your BIOS is affected by this blunder, you may have to replace the firmware's flash memory chip or the entire motherboard. You might have to replace your entire motherboard. If resetting the BIOS or suggested workarounds or some other remedy do not resolve this matter. This is a huge problem. And this is a huge problem that affects Linux specifically. And That's not a good. This is not a good thing. We're going to bring Simon on to talk about this in a little bit. By the way, we're doing something special this evening. I'm going to do a version of the Reddit AMAs. You guys can call and ask me anything. I'll answer questions on any topic. Nothing. Well, it's a family-friendly show, so keep it family-friendly. But anything anything that's family friendly, you can ask me anything. Religion, politics, relationships, diet, travel, whatever it is. Give me a call, 855-450-6624. So that's a little bit extra incentive if there's somebody out there listening that's like, do I want to take the time on Christmas to call? There's your incentive. We're going to go back to this article, and we're going to bring Simon Quigley on from the Lubuntu Project to talk about this. But first, I want to go to Joe in Philadelphia. Hey, Joe, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too, sir. How can we help?
It's more of your thoughts on the state of marketing in Linux, given the new, the revived interest in privacy and the importance of, people controlling their computing experience. Why is it that we still find a lot of open source projects almost dismissing the importance of marketing and the skill set there? I think it's just a lot of devs who are leading the projects are not really taking the time and effort to really put enough attention in that area and, even find people who could. What's your thoughts on overall marketing in Linux and what can we do to improve that?
For sure. So a couple of things. One is, I guess you have to look at how the system is structured, right? When you take an Apple or a Microsoft or a Google, they go and they find the best of the best of the best marketers. And these are people that knew from an early age that they liked creativity and that they liked speaking to people and that they had a bit of salesmanship in them. And they could take the most unflattering product and make it really shine. And after doing that over and over and over again, those people developed a reputation in the marketing world. And then they got hired for $100,000 or $200,000 a year by a Microsoft or an Apple or a Google. And then Google says, here's this computer that we're releasing that only runs a web browser. And obviously that's not very compelling, so find a way to sell it. And in a couple of years, what you find is you stamp the Google name on it and you put some of these marketing people in charge of it. And all of a sudden, every time I turn around, there's entire school systems that have dumped fully functioning computers to switch to these computers that only run a web browser. Why is that? Well, that's because they're marketed very, very well. And they're marketed by the best of the people that really know how to craft a message. And then if you look at the Linux side, who do we have? We have people that are insanely smart, that really understand the technology, that really understand the code. And how did they get that way? Well, they spent a lot of time sitting in their basement, banging on code. They spent a lot of time learning. They did not spend a lot of time learning how to craft a message because most geeks don't do it for anyone else. They do it for themselves. And rarely do I ever meet a geek that does anything because of money. They do it because they're passionate about it. And that makes for a really great technical product, and it makes for really bad marketing people. And I'm guilty of this just as much as the next person. I'm actually pretty terrible at selling the benefits of AltaSpeed technology. It's just not what I do. I'm just not that guy. I like fixing the problems. And so as we go into 2018, Joe, I guess what I'd like to see is, I agree with you. I think we do have a branding problem. I do think we have an imaging problem. And I think the way to fix that is to get people and get the Michael Tennells of the Tux Digitals out there who know how to take a otherwise difficult to market product and then put a spin on it. You go take a look at his video on Snappy Core, Snappy, and Snaps. It's, he starts off by saying this is a really confusing thing, and the namespace is really confusing, and none of it really makes any sense. And here's why they chose those names. And once you start to and in 5 minutes he explains the whole thing to you, and then once you get done, you're like, oh, okay, now that makes perfect sense. But you need somebody like him that can make that information, or Chris does the same thing on Linux Action News or Linux Unplugged. Will take very difficult or not interesting topics, and he'll condense them down into something that's palatable. I remember the first time he talked about System D. It was the same thing. It wasn't System D was not an exciting thing for a lot of us at the time. And he broke it down and said, as a human being, here are the 5 or 6 things that you can come to appreciate, and here's why they're really cool. And I think people that have that skill set are underutilized in the community. And I think people like you who notice it, and people like me who have a platform to give those people someplace to talk, I think owe them something. Does that kind of touch on what you were saying?
Yeah. And just a follow-up question. I mean, in terms of tangible things that, if you were in a room with a lot of the heads of projects that, are led by devs people, would it be one or two tangible things you would recommend them to do to help with this? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't say, start learning marketing. I want them to focus on the project. Would it be centered around like recruiting and outsourcing some of this stuff? Like, what would your advice be to those individuals? Because I'm running up against the challenge of helping out in this area, and sometimes I have to sell like the most basic things to these projects, and it's taking up a lot of time just to do the basic things in marketing for them.
Yeah. So the first thing, obviously, the shortest path to success in that industry is money, right? So start pushing for donations, start pushing for a Patreon, start pushing for, I don't exactly know how you do this, but, maybe you have a project.
You're confirming exactly.
Yeah, what most rational people think, right? Well, I mean, so imagine this, Joe. Let's walk through this thought experiment, right? Let's say you put all of the code up on GitHub, and then for Patreons only, you produce the RPM or the deb, and they get it a month early or 2 months early before you actually put it into the repository, stuff like that. Now, it's not violating the spirit of open source. If you want to go and compile the source code yourself, you're welcome to do that. But for the idiots like me, for $1 a month or $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever, I would totally pay to get debs packaged for my given thing. And the other thing too that I really think needs to be addressed. The KDE project reached out to Chris and said, would you do a promo video for, I guess I don't know if he did the entire video, if he just did the voice track, but basically he did a production for him. Did the same thing for System 76. And to the best of my knowledge, he didn't charge him for anything for it. They just asked him to do it. And he said, yeah, I would love to give back to the community. And he's a content producer, and that's what he likes to do, is he's good at producing content. And if you just ask him and say, hey, I've noticed that you're a content producer, would you come and produce a marketing video for us? He's happy to do that. And so just reaching out to the people that already exist there and saying, hey, would you help the project out? Most people in the Linux community are looking for, looking for ways to give back. Anyone ever approached me and said, could we come on the Ask Noah show, or would you produce a video, or this, that, the other? Absolutely, I would. And so I think just being able to do that and touching your own resources is a great way to go.
All right. Thanks so much. I hope people are listening to some of that advice and that important thing, because I'm just tired of seeing the best projects at a technical level go under the radar so much. And I think the funding, even if it's just, soliciting donations one time instead of Patreon, which is monthly, to just have a piece of that go back into marketing be powerful. But thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. We have had this discussion. We actually had this discussion at Linux Fest last year, that essentially a lot of times you have two competing projects. One is technically superior. One is just marketed slightly better. Neither are usually marketed terribly well, but one is marketed slightly better. And the one that is marketed slightly better wins regardless of technical superiority. And it really frustrates those that are very, technologically advanced and really understand the technology. Landon is calling from North Dakota. Hey, Landon, welcome to the Ask Noah show.
Hey, Noah, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good, man. Okay, so we have to have this discussion. So Landon is a good friend of mine. We've stayed in contact for a long time, and Christmas, I think, is by the way, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Are you having a good holiday?
I gotta say that's long time listener, first time caller.
All right. So let's get
I
the
have
backstory.
to say that the cliche.
Yeah. But it means something, because the vast majority of people that support this program are doing it silently, and they're no less appreciated than the people that call in. So I want to give the backstory here. So Landon worked retail while he was going to college here in Grand Forks. He's going for you're doing accounting when you were here, right, or finance?
Finance the first time, yeah.
So I'm going through his checkout lane, and I'm buying some stuff, and I get to the checkout lane. And we start talking, and was it my shirt that you noticed, or the jacket, or something? You asked me. You said, "Oh, you know about computers," or something like that.
You had your Altispeed T-shirt polo on.
Okay, so it was a logo that guy.
Next thing I know, I asked you a question, and next thing I know, like a half hour had passed.
Yeah. And
luckily, no one else was in there that night, so I could talk.
So we're sitting there, Lennon and I are talking. We get to know each other. He says, okay, I have these problems, this problem, that. So later that night, I was like, here's my phone number. Give me a call when you get off work. So you get off work, and I come over to your house. You're having this problem with your laptop. and we took your laptop and we wiped it clean and we put Fedora on it that night. So you met this crazy guy at the store. I've been using since then. I know, but you met this crazy guy at the store, and 7 hours later, he erased your operating system. But no. So this is one of those things that Landon. If you listen to the program, then I'm sure you've heard me talk about this. But there's two kinds of people that that I work with. There's obviously the people, the companies and stuff that we work with on a professional level. But you were just a random guy that needed some help, and so I just stopped over there to help. You weren't a client, anything like that. But so we installed Fedora on his system. And he'd never used Linux before. Never heard. Had you even heard of Linux before?
God, no.
So it's totally new to him.
And that's all. I've been using it now for 5-6 years, and I only like using Windows at work because that's the only thing they'll allow. But I love Fedora. Yeah,
so we get Linux installed, and over the next, because you were here for another 2 or 3 years, then you were gone for a year, and then you came back for a while, and throughout that time,
I was gone for 3 years in Grand Forks. Yeah, then I came back for my accounting degree.
Right. And so when he was here, he would call me and say, can we upgrade the Wi-Fi, or can we do this, or can we install this package? And I think at some point you were doing your CPA test, so we put VirtualBox and got a virtual instance of Windows 7 running on there, so you could run some accounting, so your test software. And then when you moved, then we just started using Simple Help. And so when you run into a problem, you'd say, hey, how do I do this or whatever? And so we'd go back and do that. And so then you and I were talking earlier today, and you were like, I might have some free time to call into the show. And I'm like, man, the story of how we met, that's an interesting tale.
Well, I'll admit a preface, I've always been fascinated how you do everything, because I guess working in the business world, it's more shifting towards I need to understand the IT side of stuff.
Yes.
Because with our software with IBM and Cisco, I'm more valuable to myself and to the company if I can understand at least a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes. So that's why any question I ask or have, I go to you first before our IT department, because kind of know how to make sense of what I'm trying to ask or what I'm doing. So that part I find pretty helpful, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries, man. I really appreciate, our friendship, and we spend a lot of time just talking about random things in life and this, that, and the other. But, what's interesting, you talk about, having your first foot forward and having a step up on your competition with technology. There are no stupid people that are doing their CPAs, right? Like there are no dummies that are nobody showing up just at the last day of class and drifting through that test. I mean, if you got somebody that's working in the finance place, they're going for their master's in accounting or something. I mean, those are sharp. They're all sharp cookies to begin with. So anything you can do to kind of set yourself apart, and you've kind of done that. You've always kind of had a forward-thinking guy. Like I remember when you came back to Grand Forks, when you just came back to do your accounting program, and we were having dinner, and you said, what do you think the technology is going to be 5 years from now or 6 years from now? Because that's just kind of the way you think. You're always looking at where to use a hockey analogy, where the puck's going to be, not where the puck is.
Right. Well, I guess I actually do have a question for you here. I guess just looking back the year, just here now looking forward, with the way technology is automating in, say, 10, even 20 years, what's going to make it to a person have to work in North Dakota? Because work agriculture, everything is going automation. Oil and gas is almost getting to that point. Like, is there a push to even further help people learn how to code, just so then they do have a basic skill set when the new norm comes in 20 years?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so
do you get where I'm trying to go with that question, or?
Yeah, more or less. I guess it's a weird time to have this discussion, because so many things are cloudifying right now, right? So where you're going to work and how you're going to get work done, and the things that you're able to get done on-site versus remote are totally up in the air right now, and those are shifting. So I would, even within the next 2 years, 3 years, there's going to be large parts of entire businesses that are going to be centralized in some place in Atlanta or Florida or California or whatever. There's a plethora of labor and warm weather, and a bunch of people want to be, or maybe it is North Dakota. Maybe they open some base in North Dakota, and that's where they put all the people to do all the work, and you're going to have large portions of businesses that are going to be centralized because all of it can be remote, and that wasn't the case.
Right.
Even 5 years, it's not even the case now, but it definitely will be the case in 5 years. Does that make sense?
Right. But I guess I'm saying from the standpoint, your basic jobs you still have right now, the way technology is still creeping into everyday's life, it's almost getting harder and harder that people don't want to admit that reality that their job will be obsolete in 10, 15 years.
Oh, 100%.
And that part, and that part is extremely scary. You know, people are freaking out now about jobs that are being lost to technology. What's going to happen when it's quantified even that much more?
Landon, I went to McDonald's with my kids the other day, and I walked in, and they have these big, they're like 32-inch tablets, basically. And
right.
And you go in and you order what you want and you insert your card and it runs the card and it spits out a thing. You take the little number and then your food spits out and you take your food and you go eat. There's no more anyone there taking your order. And when we actually Altispeed Technologies got the contract with a I think I can say their name. They probably won't mind free advertising. A local business called Sport Clips. They're nationwide, but we have the franchise in North Dakota, and we went and installed these new kiosk systems. So when you go into Sport Clips now, you go put your phone number in at the little touchscreen kiosk, you sign in, and it lets you know, like, this is how long your wait is or whatever, and then when you're ready, they call you back, you go get your haircut, and you go check yourself out. You swipe your card and do it all yourself. Now, in the Sport Clips case, they actually have somebody that is available to help you if you prefer to talk to somebody. It's just an option. You don't have to do the guided kiosk. In fact, there's a couple of stores we worked at where they're like, we actually prefer to walk people through it just because it's easier for them, easier for us. But the point is, like you said, that technology is there, and that's today. That's 2017. So imagine where we're going to be 5 years from now when all of this stuff, large portions of the entire economy are going to be automated. And the parts that aren't, again, they're going to condense down into one facility. There's no reason that you can't have, like at a drive-through, you can't have one facility that just takes the drive-up order for Burger King, McDonald's, Hardee's, Carl's Jr., whatever, all at one place, and just enters that into the computer, and thereby condensing the amount of jobs down, condensing the amount of labor down. So I really think technology we're at an interesting precipice where we're going to be.
Right. My thought process on that is I'd see, again, more advanced and cool, but at the same time, I'd see maybe the human element. People are like, okay, when's enough enough? Like, you don't have to put technology to the nth degree in this. Like, there is something to say about having interaction with a human being, though, too.
Absolutely. And especially for customer service.
Right.
How many people do you know that...
That's the part that drives me crazy, like when you hear retailers complaining, oh, people aren't coming to buy our stuff. Well, I hate to say it, but retailing isn't really a glamorous profession anymore. And
right.
When you treat your customers like, who wants to come to have your product, when I can just go on Amazon or online anywhere and just buy my stuff.
Exactly. 100%. And so you start stepping through that and you say, okay, not only are the customer service representatives not particularly polite at Walmart or Walgreens or whatever, like I've legitimately gone into some of these big box stores and I'll say, where are the peas? Where's the corn? And they'll say in the frozen food section. Well, I know that. I would, walk me over there and show me, like, here's where we put this stuff. But they don't know that's part of the issue, right? And Amazon, I just take a picture of what I want and it shows up at my door 2 days later. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the experience is totally night and day. And the other thing is how many people have you ever met that like hitting a phone tree when they call their bank or they call whatever? No one in the world wants to hit a phone tree and dial through an automated system. Everyone wants to talk to a human being. Just have the human being pick up the phone and say, what's your last name? What's your social security number? Hi, Noah. How can I help you? I mean, that's what we would all expect. We don't get that. And unfortunately, as you correctly pointed out, I think it's only going to get worse.
Well, part of the problem, though, is some people just don't queue and they expect it just to be, I don't know, given to them. And they want you to feel bad for them. At the same time, in life, it's your own decision you make, and it's a result of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of one of those little flip books I remember as a kid. If you want this pass, go to page 5. If you want this one, go to page 10. It kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to watch. But I really thank you very much for calling in, Len. It was great to talk to you on Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I figured once you made that post that you were doing today, I'm like, well, no time like now to do that. So
yeah, exactly. Well, we appreciate having you. Oh, I'm sorry. I hit the button too soon. I'm so sorry, Landon. But we appreciate having you as a listener. We definitely appreciate you having you as a caller. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com. Again, we're going to get back to Simon Quigley and the Ubuntu article here, but I got a couple other people that are lining up to talk, so I'm gonna take those calls first, then we'll get to Simon. Joel, you're on the Ask Noah show. Hey, welcome.
How's it going, Noah?
Hey, welcome back. You're starting to be a regular caller. You're going up in my book.
Well, I guess it's because it's currently it's past currently break right now, and currently trying to hang in there and all that. So.
Yeah. Well, hey. That's right. You're a student. I forgot about that. Yeah. Well, how did finals go?
Finals. I think I did okay, and I'm trying to trudge along, and so far so good. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So, how can I help?
So, you said this was an AMA, so I'm sort of want to get your try to get into your head a little bit.
Sure.
Who do you look toward in terms of your philosophy, political, or anything like that, with regards to shaping your opinions on technology and non-technological issues such as net neutrality, Edward Snowden, other stuff like that?
Sure. I don't know if there's any one human being that I look to and say that person perfectly represents all of my beliefs. I have a weird twist in my politics. So I most of you guys know I tend to lean pretty far right on the political spectrum, but my guiding principle is very simple. It's the whole live and let live thing, right? I don't believe that I have any right to tell you what to do with your life, and I don't believe that you have any right to tell me what to do with my life. And the only time we should set a definitive boundary in the sand is where you think that your freedom starts to infringe on my freedom to do something, and or vice versa. So if you said, well, I think I have the freedom to come and to cut your hand off, well, I don't think that would be that's where your freedom ends and my, because our freedoms start to collide. So that's where I think we need to stop and put some lines in the sand. I always try to advocate to keep the regulating body as small as possible because, and it's very simple. I advocate for the maximum absence of coercion. I just prefer to let rational thinking adults think for themselves and make their own decisions. So if I take that logic and apply it to something like net neutrality, the question becomes, do I think that the world would be a better place if the federal government steps in and crafts legislation around net neutrality, or do I think that the world would be a better place if we let rational, self-thinking adults figure it out for themselves and deal with it at a local level, at a state level, at a city level, whatever the smallest level that we can get away with and still achieve the objective? Then the answer would be yes. And I've gotten asked this question. They've said, well, don't you think that net neutrality is a bit of an exception to all other forms of all other issues because it's so necessary as a part of life? And yes, I do. I agree that when it comes to the internet, we have gotten to a point where I think the internet is just as valuable as hot water. And I think the internet is definitely more valuable than telephones. And so by that logic, then should we not classify the internet as some sort of utility and have the federal government regulate it and stuff like that? If somebody proposed a constitutional amendment in the U.S. and said, I propose that we now add to the 18 enumerated powers, make them the 19 enumerated powers, and it's part of the federal government's job to bury fiber and get fiber to all 50 states and regulate a free and open internet. If the government wanted to put government fiber in, I'm okay with that. It's something it's a discussion I'm willing to have at the very least. What I'm not okay with is private businesses saving up and investing billions or hundreds of billions of dollars into their own infrastructure and then being told, well, you can't do this. That's where I start to get a little hazy. And it's weird. And I've had this discussion with numerous people. We've gone back and forth. Chris, myself, in particular, neither one of us like the idea of the Comcasts of the world deciding what the future of the internet is. But neither one of us really like the idea of the FCC having this broad stroke to just decide what can be passed on the internet and what can't be passed. So it doesn't seem like there are a lot of good options right now. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
I'm kind of rambling.
Yeah, well, also there's also the concern that the FTC doesn't have enough power in terms of antitrust capability and all that, and that sort of spurns on this sort of concern toward net neutrality. But again, the free market doing the best in its power to try to make stuff better for the consumer in the long term. It's sort of a take and turn. Me personally, I sort of lean. I call myself a spiky elephant in terms of like mixing libertarian with conservative stuff. So I sort of struggle with sort of technological issues with regards to my beliefs.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I hear that perfectly. I think that, yeah, I hear that perfectly. So, but anyway, we'll wait and see what happens. And if we get halfway down 2018 and my internet turns down to 56K, then I'm not opposed to. I think the measure of intelligent human being is when you can look back and say I was wrong about that. I made a mistake. And so if we get halfway down 2018 and it turns out that the internet is running at 56K, I'll come right on the air and say I was wrong. Frank is calling from Connecticut. Hey, Frank, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah. If you remember, we sort of tweeted a week or two ago. I'd taken some photos with an Olympus camera, which put out RAWs, which I don't want to, pay for Adobe and rather not steal anything. So I was hoping to find
Yes, I do remember.
Yes. Yes. Try to find an open source or, alternative. I did try Darktable, but it was the Windows port just because I was sitting at work, and it did not look like it supported the Olympus's RAW file format. So here I am.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so let's back up. Just for anyone that's listening that doesn't understand your question, when you take a picture on a professional grade digital camera, on a really good digital camera, there is the raw sensor data where it takes the actual image that it captures and it stores it. Now, how it interprets that data is done in software, right? So, for example, a really go-to example is white balance. White balance is not done on the image sensor. The image does not, the color that you're taking of a white wall doesn't change based on when you take the picture. It's the color that it is given the lighting situation that it is. So it's in software that we tell the picture, this is the sensor data, and here's how you process white, and this is what true white is, so adjust all of the other colors based on the fact that this is true white. So what happens is, on a normal camera, if you take a picture on your phone, and it saves it as a JPEG or even a TIFF, even if it's uncompressed, that image has already been processed. That image has already been taken and said, okay, this is what true white is, and this is what everything else is, and then it spits out an image. And you can't ever go back and change that. You can tweak it a little bit, but you're not truly modifying the image data. You're just essentially recoloring the photo, so to speak. The advantage of the RAW format, which Nikon, Canon, Olympus, Sony, you name it, the advantage of the RAW format is it gives you that raw sensor data. And so you can then bring it into a software like Darktable, and in post, with zero degradation to the photo, correct white balance, you can adjust brightness to a certain degree, you can do a lot of these things. And so it's very, very important. If you're a photographer, you never accept anything less than RAW. And if you're in the marketing, we were talking about marketing earlier, if you're in the marketing campaign, usually the photographer will supply you with the raw photos so that you can use them for various things. Anyway, so what Frank's problem is, he bought an Olympus, I'm assuming it's a DSLR?
Yeah, it's because they're all micro four thirds.
Oh, nice.
It's their entry level. Their EM 10 Mark II, so it does both JPEG and RAW. Little background: I was going on a company trip early this year, actually right before I went to Dayton, Ohio for Hamvention. Someone stole my camera, and I'm like, oh crap, need a camera. Going to Australia. So ended up with the Olympus. Very happy with it, and I'm like, kind of want to process these now and get these out of the camera.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I'll tell you. Two different things. They're going to sound conflicting. I have never had an issue with a RAW file not opening up in Darktable. However, I've also never owned an Olympus camera, so that might be why. Would there be any possibility that you would send me one of your RAW files?
I have a entire set of files to send you. Just tell me where to do it.
Cool. You can do it. The easiest thing, if you just email them to live@asknoahshow.com. I happen to have that open. And what I'll do, Frank, is I will get this pull back up. Okay. What I will do, Frank, is I'll download those files and I will send them off to a couple of my contacts that work in this industry, because I don't. I play around in it a little bit, but I got people that eat, live, and breathe still photography, and they know everything there is to know about Darktable. They know more about Darktable and raw images than the people at Canon and Nikon who make them. So, and I will forward those images to them and say, how do we get these things to open in Darktable? And they might say, I know with Canon, for example, or no, I think it was Nikon. Nikon has this ability to do live, I don't remember what they call it. I think it's live photography. But basically, you set the camera up and you can actually actuate the shutter from software control. So the advantage of that is you can have one guy that's framing the shots and one guy that's sitting and staring at the computer and actually choosing when to actually take the shots. And he's not moving around, so he's got a much better idea of when things are in focus and stuff like that. And I know for that particular function to work, we had to install some sort of add-on or something like that. And if memory serves correctly, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like we had to do the same thing when the D5 came out with Nikon. So I will. That's what I can do for you. I can get those over to the people that can help, and then hopefully we'll have an answer for you in the next week or so.
All right. What's the address again?
live@asknoahshow.com.
All right. Cool. I will do that now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, and have a Merry Christmas. We appreciate you calling. Okay, phone lines, 855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624, or live at asknoahshow.com. I'm going to go to Simon Quigley. He's joining us from Wisconsin on Christmas, setting aside time on his Christmas, it's not really Christmas Eve, it's the eve of Christmas, I guess, to talk about this important bug that is bricking, essentially, Lenovo and, was it Acer computers if you install the latest version of 1710. So welcome to the program, Simon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So a little bit of background for folks. You actually do some of our call screening sometimes, so people may have talked to you on the phone.
Yep.
Cool. So give me the background. So what is your take on this? I guess my question is, what do you think? Do you think this is Lenovo's fault, or do you think this is Canonical's fault, or maybe a bit of both?
So, I think, to go into, you sort of did a good explanation of what the bug actually was. That it's a problem when you install Ubuntu 17.10 that it will, mess with the BIOS. And I've seen different issues from different people. But the most common issue I've seen is with people where they cannot write to the BIOS. And in some cases, it completely bricks the computer. And as a matter of faults, I think it's from what I remember from looking into this, it's a common BIOS, like a flash chip that ships on these motherboards that has an implementation error of some sort, where the Linux kernel driver. I'm sort of iffy on my explanation here because the specifics of which haven't been worked out yet. You said that it was the Intel SPI driver in the Linux kernel, and in the meantime, ever since this bug was discovered, they have disabled that driver in Ubuntu 17.10, and they have released it as an update. But they're still working out the specifics to see what exactly the problem is and to see if they can release a fix. So I have theories on what it is, and I've seen them talk about it, but really, I think in the next week or two, maybe even more, maybe less, we'll get a solid explanation about that. But mainly, I think it's the fault of several entities. I think in this case, because this problem did ship with Ubuntu 17.10, and these laptops they haven't been released since 17.10 was released. So this bug was spotted, 2 months now after the fact. So I think it's partly an error of the flavor maintainers and Canonical as a whole that we didn't spot this. And then on the side of Lenovo and their and the implementation of that flash chip, sure, they ship with these devices with no Windows installed by default, but honestly, it's this improper implementation, if it's vulnerable, I see vulnerable, lack of a better word there, but if it's vulnerable to this type of problem, I mean, they should have done. I don't know if they should have done better QA or if they should have, looked at the implementation more carefully.
So, to a certain degree, is it not? I mean, I hate this feels like a cop-out, but to a certain degree, when you have a manufacturer, a hardware manufacturer that isn't directly working with the software manufacturer, I mean, isn't that the whole point? I realize how much of a cop-out this sounds. I have a hard time even saying it, but I just, the question that comes to mind is that not kind of the point of the non-LTS to figure out the in-between bugs, even if they are huge and catastrophic? Because how is Canonical supposed to know that Lenovo screwed up the implementation of this thing? How are they supposed to know that unless they put the software out? Thank God they didn't do it with an LTS.
Right. Exactly. And either way, it's, I think they're now working with, this is unofficial, but I think they're now working with some Lenovo engineers to see what the problem is on this. But, honestly, the only way they can find bugs a lot of the time is by testing these sort of things. And I think it was a community contributor that did actually find this bug. In fact, just looking at the bug report now on Launchpad, it wasn't a Canonical employee that submitted this bug report. It was someone from the community who finally discovered something going on. And it's a point that I really want to emphasize that even though if you have a spare machine sometimes, even though these issues do happen, it's better to discover them sooner rather than later, if you know what I mean. It would have been great if we would have discovered this before the release actually happened, and it would have been, it's as simple as releasing a fix, maybe if it was close enough to the release, stopping the release from happening until that's happened. But now it's 2 months after the release, we pulled it from the CD image servers, and now we have to get a fix, after the fact. So I think the point that I really want people to take away from this is if you're wondering what to do with that spare computer that you have, help us test this sort of thing. Just put Linux on there, put Ubuntu on it, or whatever beta, like if it's a beta release, just help it, we like testing from a flavor point of view. We like testing from community who actually will install this on their systems. So that's my major point that I want people to take away from this.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that's great advice. The obvious problem, right? Because both you and I are going to catch some slack for me for saying it's the point of the non-LTS, and you're probably going to get some slack for saying just put it on a spare machine, because there's the obvious thing is going to be, well, one, most people don't have enough money to have a spare $1,600 Ultrabook laying around. And even if they did, even if it was a spare machine, nobody's going to be happy about that machine getting bricked. So it's not like this. Simon nor I are saying this is an acceptable thing. I just question, given the nature of how this software comes into existence, what would you have done differently? Somebody give me a better idea.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm asking, is there a better idea? If somebody's out there that's like, well, here's how you could do that differently. I mean, short of Lenovo coming forward and saying, we're going to start working with Canonical, I just don't see a better idea. That's just what you get.
Other than just testing to make sure these things don't happen. Otherwise, I guess I'm just a little bit misunderstanding your question here.
Well, okay, so take what you just said, right? Like the testing to make sure these things don't happen. That's not feasible. I mean, you can't have Canonical buy every make and model computer that exists. I mean, that's not possible. So, I mean, to a certain, I mean, I like I said, it sounds like a cop out, but the truth is, like, do we not just have to accept that we're going to have some of these problems, and that's just these are the kind of problems you're going to get on a non-LTS?
Sometimes, unfortunately, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
At least, like you said before, at least this was a non-LTS, and at least it wasn't an LTS release, or where everybody's putting their production hardware on. I mean, some people probably did upgrade their production systems to this, and were
I did.
They were unpleasantly surprised. Yeah, especially with all the hype around Ubuntu 17.10 and the GNOME. The main Ubuntu having like a new GNOME refresh and everything, all that, I think this was one of the releases where people would have upgraded to 17.10. So I guess even when it's an exciting release like this, sometimes there are drawbacks to upgrading.
Yeah, I guess that's what it boils down. I guess that's what it boils down to. It feels so difficult to say. Like, I mean, I guess here's the other side of that, though, Simon. So take a look at this. So, like, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be like, well, man, you want to talk about bad marketing for an operating system? Going on the air and saying that, well, bricking your BIOS on a $1,700 computer, that's just par for the course if you're using Ubuntu. That doesn't sound real great. But here's the other side of that, though, right? Microsoft just a couple of weeks ago had that blue screen issue where it would get into the blue screen of death and it would just cycle through and you couldn't get out of it. And then like a week after that or 2 weeks after that, Apple had the thing where you could just sign in as root if you just hit enter a couple of times. You type root as the username and just put enter enough times. High Sierra, you put root as the username and you press enter like 3 or 4 times and it just logs you right into the computer. So it's not, and I mean, and again, this is probably probably a bad situation to grandstand on because, I mean, none of those cause, potentially irreversible hardware repairs. But what I'm saying, my point is that all those operating systems have catastrophic failures, which is which problem you want to solve. And this is, this is one of the, unless I'm wrong, I don't remember anything ever being quite this severe. We had one issue a couple of years ago back with Samsung's. They had a Samsung Ultrabook that... I think it would break it if you tried to boot Linux on, but other than that, I mean, for the most part, I don't think this is a routine problem that we run into. And here's a third point too: if you bought a computer that was designed to run Linux from a company like System76, from a company like Dell, you're not going to have these issues. Or if you do what I do, buy the same computer. Buy the same computer that the companies like Red Hat buys. Red Hat buys a bunch of X1s, T420s, T430s. I buy the similar models to what they have, and I don't have these problems. So, I mean, there are ways to sidestep that if you're worried about it. It would be nice to live in a world where, like, Linux would run on every computer known to man. I just don't see how that's possible, or how it's possible to know for sure.
Right. I mean, with some of these devices, you don't know if they're going to have some unknown quirks. Things like you said, I don't think there's anything as severe as this, at least that I can remember. I'm a fairly new community member within Ubuntu within the past, I think I started contributing 2.5 years ago. So I haven't been around for that long, but as far as I can remember, this is the most severe thing that I've seen since I was in the community.
Sure. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. We really appreciate you coming on the phone on the program to talk about it. And if people want to follow you or keep track of what you're doing and the contributions that they're making, where would they go?
I think Twitter's the best. Twitter.com/TSimonQ2, TSIMONQ2. Otherwise, I'm on the usual platforms. You're
in IRC. You're in the Ask Noah Telegram group, telegram.asknoahshow.com. You're in all those places. I can find you there. Yeah, I mean, again, thank you very much. Hey, here's the thing. I'm gonna take him off the air so he can't argue with me on this. He may say he's only been contributing for 2 years, but here's the thing. That guy contributes more in a day than most people do in like a year of time. I mean, he's crazy involved. In fact, so funny story. I invited him on the show. And as I did that, somebody else in the Telegram group goes, man, that guy is everywhere. Like every chat, every Linux chat, every community known to man. Simon Quigley's there. I mean, the guy is just, he's an amazing contribution. We're very fortunate to have him here on the team at the Ask Noah Show and to provide us with some commentary and his insight because it's, like I said, he may have only been officially involved contributing code for the last 2 years, but he's heavily, heavily involved. Again, phone line's 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email live at asknoahshow.com. Bitcoin is $14,090 and Litecoin is at $273.67. Now, here's what's interesting about the cryptocurrency in the last week. Litecoin tanked a little bit. Now, for those of us that have been in the cryptocurrency world for years, this is nothing. This is just a daily swing. In fact, that's not even really a daily swing. That's actually less than a daily swing. It's just not a big deal. No, we don't care. It drops $100, it raises $100, it drops $200, raises $200. Nobody cares. I think the low point for Litecoin recently was $190. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he lost a bunch of money. He put some money in Litecoin, and then it tanked, and then he lost his money. Now, of course, you don't lose your money if you don't actually cash out, right? Because it would have, and it did, recover. But the reason I bring this up is just to quickly point out again that these wild swings in cryptocurrency, to me, is pretty good evidence that it should not be an investment. You do not take out a mortgage on your house. I saw an article of somebody borrowing money on their house, on their home, to invest in cryptocurrency. Are you nuts? Don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to lose your home. So don't do crazy stuff. If you want to get involved in the cryptocurrency, you should do it. It's really fun. I like cryptocurrency. Don't borrow on your house. Don't be crazy. Anyway, that's really all I have to say about cryptocurrency. So I have a really cool thing that I've been playing with. And I debated if I was going to share this on the air or not. Because it's not scandalous, I guess. It just, I don't know. It just feels like it's something that could potentially get me a lot of hate. But I'm going to do it anyway. So many of you are familiar with various file sharing tools, right? And today, torrents and Usenet are very popular, very prolific. A lot of people are using them. But way back in the day, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we used to use something called LimeWire and Morpheus. This is kind of after the Napster days, but before the days of torrents and stuff like that. And the nice thing about LimeWire was it was just an application that you ran, and you typed in the name of the thing that you wanted, and it would go out and find the thing that you wanted, and then you could just click on it, and then it would download that thing. And the software would keep track of the various sources that house that particular file. So you could download music, you could download videos, you could download software, anything you want. And yes, before anyone asks, it was used, it had a huge following among people that wanted to download illegal content. If you didn't pay for the music, it's stealing the song. And that's wrong, and you shouldn't do it. And people did it anyway, and people are still doing it. Now, these days, the reality is that it's actually easier and cheaper just to go on well, maybe not cheaper, but it's easier just to go on Amazon and download an MP3 for, $1.49 or whatever. But I came across a piece of software that is the evolution of LimeWire, and it is called FrostWire. Now, FrostWire is an open source peer-to-peer file sharing program. And what FrostWire allows you to do is, again, just like in the LimeWire days, you could just type in the name of the software program or song or video or whatever it is that you want. And what FrostWire does is it will go out and look at torrents. It goes out and looks at YouTube. It goes out and looks at its own little database thing of other FrostWire users. And then it manages all of that stuff and downloads it just like LimeWire used to do. Runs on Linux, runs really great on Linux. And I've been using it all week. I've been doing a lot of YouTube stuff. So a lot of you know that I use YouTube DL to download all of my content, and then I play it locally. Well, the nice thing about FrostWire is I can paste the name of a YouTube video into FrostWire, and I can go download that, and it acts as it's a graphical interface download manager. I can specify where it downloads to, all that good stuff. So I think it's a really cool piece of software. I think people should check it out. I think if you're one of those people that gets really upset over anything that could potentially be used for something illegal, then you should probably stay away from FrostWire, because I think that's a large following of it. But I think it's a really cool piece of software, and I think that cohesive software like that is undervalued. Like, I'll give you another example. So it does torrents, right? So I can go and look at let's say I wanted to download 1710. Right now, you can't download off of Canonical's site. But there are torrent links to go download the 1710 ISO. So let's say you wanted to do some testing, or let's say you wanted to play with it, or let's say your system just wasn't affected, and so you don't care and you just need to reinstall your OS, but maybe you didn't keep the ISO because you expected it to be available. You could go on FrostWire. You can type it in, and it will download it at a ridiculous speed because it's using torrents. So it's maximizing your download connection, maximizing the upload connections to other places. JJ4884 asks, is it safer to download torrents on Linux? Yes, it is. Not because Linux is immune to viruses, not because Linux is immune to malware. The reality is that, and Matt Hartley said it best, and I've stolen it. I'm kind of, but anything that can execute code is vulnerable to attack. And Linux can most definitely execute code. But here's the difference. Very, very few people are writing malicious code for Linux. The vast majority of malicious code is being written for Windows. And the people that are done writing malicious code for Windows and are trying to move on to something else are writing it for Mac. Nobody's writing malicious code for Linux. Again, not nobody, very few people. And then on top of that, you have things that the people that would like to write malicious code for Linux have to overcome. You have to overcome things like SE Linux. You have to overcome things like privilege escalation. So, it's not something we really worry about on Linux. And so, yeah, I would say that if you wanted to, if you just looked at it, statistically speaking, are you more or less likely to wind up with some sort of malicious software that can actually damage your computer on Linux or on Windows? I would say, yeah, absolutely. You're more likely to wind up with that on Linux, on Windows. On Linux, it's going to be a little bit safer. And I haven't used it for anything, nefarious. I've just been downloading, like I said, YouTube videos. But I like that it has the YouTube database, or it can tie into the YouTube database and do all of that and then manage all of the downloads. I think that's really cool. Hey guys, we're doing our Distro Elimination Challenge. If you haven't heard of this is asknoahshow.com/elimination. We asked you which two distros would you use on the desktop. The two choices were Solid X and GUI XSD. I don't know how to pronounce it. 68% of you said Solid X, and only 30% of you voted for GUI XSD. Total of 50 votes. So Solid X wins that round of the Distro Elimination Challenge. This week we have up Void Linux and Peppermint OS. Void Linux, you can learn more at voidlinux.eu. Void is a general-purpose operating system based on the monolithic Linux kernel. Each package system allows you to quickly install, update, and remove software. Software is provided in binary packages and can be built from source with the help of XBPS source package collections. The competitor is Peppermint OS, peppermintos.com. Say hello to the next iteration of our lightweight, stable, and super-fast operating system. Peppermint 8 is built on a long-term support LTS code base, so as well as being customizable to your heart's content, it will be good to go for quite some time. Peppermint 8 is built on the Ubuntu 16.04 code base. You can vote for one of those two distros after this episode is published at asknoahshow.com/elimination. As a reminder, we're going to go through all of the desktop picks that you, or the desktop operating systems that you have submitted until we come to a clear winner for the desktop operating system. We're going to get a clear winner for the server operating system and a clear winner for the utility distro. And once we have all of those, we're going to publish all the results and why people voted for the various distros and what their reasoning was onto a big database. And that will be a living database. We will continually update it or make it into some sort of a wiki so anyone can edit it and upload it. And the advantage to doing that is that when newcomers come and sit down and say, what Linux OS do I want to start with? We can point them to a page and go, here's what most people wind up on, but here's why other people chose these choices, and you can choose for yourself. asknoah.com/elimination. Our live time is moving, guys. This is the last week we're going to be doing a show on Mondays. Next week, starting next week, January the 2nd, our live time will shift to Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Central. So same time, just 24 hours later. Why is this, you ask? Because we are teaming up with our friends at the Linux Unplugged program. They're going to be taking the community hour before us and doing a 2-hour show where you can participate live in a community lug. And after that, we're going to pick up right after them. We're going to have the stream set up in such a way that it will no longer have to refresh your player or anything like that. It's just going to be one sweet, smooth transition from one Linux program to the next. And you guys can hang around, and we'll take all of your questions if you have them coming on in the next hour. Now, I don't know if it's going to work out or not. I'm going to try. It's kind of hard to get people to do a lot of invasive work this time of the year. But if I can get them to do it, I'm going to try to get our Mumble room set up so that Mumble is tied into the Ask Noah show, at least for next week. So that as we go into from the Linux Unplugged program to the Ask Noah show, if you guys want to participate in the Ask Noah show, then you can ask your questions right on Mumble with the computer without having to worry about calls and stuff like that. As a reminder, if you do want to call into the program and you don't live in the U.S., right now the best option is Skype. You can sign up for a free Skype account, and you can call toll-free. And we have a toll-free number, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Of course, you can always email the show live at asknoahshow.com. Huge thanks to everyone that participated in the Elimination Challenge and is voting and continues to vote. And I really appreciate all of you that took the time out of your day to call in for this Christmas episode. I know that all of you have family that you're celebrating with and other things you could be doing. So yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and join us during our live time. Thank you to anyone who is listening during our live time. And of course, a huge thank you to the Ask Noah Telegram group that constantly supports the show. you can join telegram.asknoahshow.com, become a part of the program, become a part of the discussion all week long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That brings us to the end of this week's episode. Huge thanks to Sarah, our call screener, Rikai, our video editor, and Ben, our producer. We'll hand you off to Crosspoint coming up next on Logos Radio, KEQQ 88.3 OPFM, Grand Forks.